Now bring in Jamil Jaffer. He is the National Security Institute founder and former associate counsel to President George W. Bush. Jamil, thanks for hopping on with me last second for breaking news here. So the president also said this is a great deal for a lot of reasons, but number one, by far, is 99.9% they will never have a nuclear weapon, and you can't give Iran a nuclear weapon. What do you make of that 0.1%? Do you think the president will get his wish?
Well, the problem, I think, Markie, is that the president's laid out a situation where Iran is allowed to enrich domestically. They're allowed to take uranium and increase it to the point where it can be used for nuclear energy purposes and potentially increase it past that point to weapons-grade uranium. This is the exact same problem the Obama nuclear deal had, the fundamental flaw. Now, again, that's not written in this text, but that's where we're headed. That's what's clear from all the outlines of this deal that we've seen. Again, we haven't seen the text of this particular deal. We don't know what's going to be in the deal 60 days from now, but that appears to be the subtext, and that's a fundamental problem because that's one of the main reasons, along with pallets of cash, that the president got rid of the Iran nuclear deal that President Obama signed. Of course, he's going to be sending pallets of cash too. He makes the point, well, it's not our cash, it's their cash, but it's still $12 billion of Iranian cash that they're going to be getting back, frozen currently, they don't have access to, that they're going to use to support terrorism and problematic things in the Gulf. By the way, they're also going to get to sell oil under this deal, which is another source of revenue for this terrorist supporting regime. So the idea somehow that this is dramatically better than the Iran nuclear deal that President Obama signed, doesn't give them the pallets of cash, doesn't allow them to get a nuclear weapon. They agreed, by the way, in the Obama nuclear deal to not have a nuclear weapon either. That didn't make it a good deal. I don't think it makes this one a good deal either. Again, a lot to be seen, Markie, in the text of this MOU that they're going to sign, and then what happens in 60 days. But as of right now, I'm pretty skeptical.
Yeah, that's yet to be seen. So the enriched uranium gets to stay there in Tehran, for the 60-day window. There's also no named verification mechanism. There's no inspection protocol. At what point would you call that? I mean, you're not calling it a breakthrough just yet. So what's going to have to be in this memorandum of understanding, and the eventual peace agreement, if there even is one in 2 months, for you to consider this a win, Jamil?
It would have to require Iran to give up all of its nuclear fuel, not downblend it, not reduce it, but take it all out of the country and have it destroyed, and never have the right to enrich uranium domestically. That was the line the president set even after the war ended. He said no enrichment for Iran. And here we are now. It's just no nuclear weapon, the same thing that the Obama nuclear deal said.
Yeah. And what about the extraction? If we even get to that point where Iran would let us do that, strategically, what does that look like? What does that entail? And would that call for boots on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, I just can't imagine a scenario in which Iran lets American excavators and analysts and the like into their country to these very sensitive nuclear sites, allow us to dig down into them and take out the nuclear dust, as the president calls it, or the highly enriched uranium, as everybody else calls it, out of the ground and take it out. Remember, Iran never would even let IAEA, that is International Atomic Energy Agency, inspectors come to their sites like Parchin, which were sites where they were formerly trying to do nuclear weapons work. They wouldn't let them come there years afterwards, after they had, bulldozed the site, completely replaced everything. They still wouldn't let people go there because they were afraid we would pick up sensitive information about what they had done. There's almost zero chance, I think, Mark, that we're going to have American boots on the ground taking this nuclear dust out. But of course, if we don't have that, who's going to do it? How are we going to be sure? How do we know Iran didn't move some of that 440 kilograms somewhere else to a different site? Again, we're relying on a lot of things that we don't have details on. We're relying on trust in the Iranians, and this is fundamentally a regime that's proven over and over again it can't be trusted. I'm befuddled about why the president would do a deal like this. You
can't even put trust in Iran, in the same sentence. And this is something I asked, an earlier guest this morning that I'd like to ask you the same thing. Say we do strike some sort of long-term deal with them in 60 days. How do we hold their feet to the fire? I mean, what mechanisms even exist to make sure that they hold up their end of the bargain?
Well, what seems implicit in the rumored text of the deal that we've seen, and in the president's talking points, again, rumored talking points that we've seen, is the idea that if Iran doesn't comply, doesn't come to a deal within 60 days, that we're going to go back to bombing them, that we're going to go ahead and do all the things that we started doing before. The problem, of course, is Iran doesn't think that's true because they've watched a ceasefire take place for the last 4, 5, 6 weeks where they haven't done anything. They haven't reopened the Strait of Hormuz, and we haven't really gone back to attacking them. Yes, here and there, we've gotten some skirmishes when they come after us or come after international shipping, but we haven't fundamentally shown the willingness to use the use of force to go after them or to force the Strait of Hormuz open with military force the way President Reagan did back in the 80s, escorting ships through and daring the Iranians to attack us. So I think they're going to be skeptical of the U.S.'s willingness to enforce the 60-day deal and or any future deal. And if that's true, then we really don't have any, credibility or any tool to use. And that's what makes this deal so problematic. If the president wanted a really good deal, he has to be willing to go back to the fight. He has to be willing to go back to go to reopening the Strait of Hormuz by force. He hasn't shown the willingness to do that. I don't see how the Iranians feel the need to negotiate anything in the next 60 days, much less come to a better deal than the one they did with President Obama, which this one, again, we haven't seen the text, but I'd be very skeptical of what we're seeing right now, Markie.
The other thing that a lot of people are going to zero in on in this text is, reporting that there's this $300 billion private investment, fund designed to trigger investment into Iran. That has reportedly been outlined in this deal. But the president just said there, sitting next to the president of Egypt, that's totally false. Your reaction and your read on that, Jamil?
Well, I mean, the vice president himself has talked about there's going to be a reconstruction fund. We've seen him on TV talking about that. We've also seen in the president's purported talking points about a reconstruction fund. The point they keep making, both of them keep making, is no American funds are going in. But it doesn't matter whose funds they are, whether it's the Saudis' funds or the Emiratis or all people who've been attacked by Iran brutally, or the Europeans' funds, right? It's still $300 billion going to the regime in Iran that will almost certainly use those pallets of cash not to rebuild their society for their people, but to conduct terrorist attacks against America and our allies in the region and to build things like their nuclear program, to rebuild their drone capacity, rebuild their ballistic missile capacity. I mean, it is crazy to give this regime a penny, much less $12 billion in their own frozen assets, much less oil revenue that they didn't have before or didn't have at least during the blockade, much less $300 billion of anyone's money. Forget the U.S. or anyone else's. I mean, it's inexplicable, particularly after this president rightly railed on the Obama and Biden administrations for sending pallets of cash to the Iranians.
Jamil, one more quick question before I let you go. Just a few seconds left. So Friday triggers a 2-month window of more negotiating. Where are we 60 days from then?
Well, I mean, if past is any prologue, probably not much further towards a deal. And if we are close to a deal, unfortunately, it may not be a deal that the U.S. That is beneficial to the American people, that the United States would like, and that our allies in the region would support. And that's the real problem. The president, by the way, under the law, under the Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act, almost certainly has to submit any final deal and probably this MOU as well to Congress, and cannot relieve sanctions until Congress has a chance to act. He can after a certain period of time. So we'll see. He's talked about submitting it, but he seems to think it's voluntary. My reading of the law is that it's mandatory. So we'll see whether that happens as well.
Yeah. And the president says we'll learn more today at a 4:00 news conference. That's local time. So you do the math. I believe that should be about 9:00 Central here this morning. Jamil, Jaffer, got to end it there. But thank you so much, sir, as always.